The interior of the truck was warm, a stark contrast to the biting chill of the upper atmosphere. Vedran leaned his head against the glass, watching the blurred streetlights of Skopje's outskirts. Beside him, Marco drove with a steady, practiced hand, the rhythm of the engine a soothing bass note to the high-pitched ringing still echoing in Vedran's ears. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was the comfortable quiet of two people who had just shared a survival instinct. They pulled into a small, 24-hour roadside diner, a tradition Marco insisted on after every night flight. As Astra hopped out of the truck, her movements were fluid again, the stiffness of the landing field replaced by a restless energy. She caught Vedran's eye and gestured toward the glowing neon sign. "Sugar and caffeine," she said, her voice finally losing its airy quality. "The only way to convince the body it's actually back on the ground." Inside, the air smelled of burnt coffee and fried dough. Marco spread a topographic map of the Vodna range across the laminate table, his finger tracing the invisible line they had just carved through the sky. Astra leaned over his shoulder, her finger tapping a spot further north, near the jagged peaks of the Shar Mountains. They were already plotting the next escape, their minds refusing to stay grounded for more than an hour. Vedran watched them, feeling a strange sense of belonging. An hour ago, he was a student, terrified of a downdraft. Now, he sat among veterans, his hands steady as he reached for a steaming mug. Marco looked up from the map, his eyes crinkling. "You've got the itch now, don't you?" he asked. Vedran didn't have to answer. The hunger for the horizon was a physical sensation in his chest, a new heart beating alongside the old one. As they walked back to the truck, Astra fell into step beside Vedran. She didn't talk about the flight this time. Instead, she spoke of the wind, as if it were a temperamental teacher. "It doesn't care if you're brave," she noted, looking at the dark silhouette of the mountain. "It only cares if you're honest. Tonight, you were honest with yourself about the risk, and that's why you're still standing." They climbed back into the truck, but Vedran opted for the open bed this time, wanting to feel the rush of the air one last time before the day ended. Astra joined him, leaning against the side rail. As the truck accelerated, the wind whipped through their hair, a pale imitation of the mountain gusts, but enough to keep the memory alive. Below them, the city was a grid of rules and logic, but they were looking at the spaces in between. At the storage unit, the work was methodical. Marco passed the heavy gear bags to Vedran, who hoisted them into their racks with a strength he hadn't known he possessed. The physical labor felt like a grounding ritual, a way to sweat out the last of the adrenaline. "The mountain matures you faster than any classroom," Marco grunted, locking the heavy steel door. "You went up a boy, Vedran. You came down a pilot." Astra and Marco stood by the gate, their shadows long under the flickering security light. They discussed the maintenance of the gliders, a tedious but necessary part of the dream. To fly, one had to respect the mechanics of the earth. Vedran watched them, realizing that maturity wasn't just about the thrill of the flight, it was about the discipline of the preparation and the humility of the return. When it was time to part ways, Astra gave Vedran a brief, firm nod. "See you at dawn on Saturday?" she asked. It wasn't a question of if, but when. Vedran felt a surge of pride. He was no longer an observer of their world. He was a participant. He waved as their car pulled away, the sound of the engine fading into the quiet hum of the sleeping city. Later, standing on his own small balcony, Vedran looked out at Mount Vodna. It looked different now, not like a daunting giant, but like an old friend with secrets he was finally starting to understand. He realized that the weight he felt upon landing wasn't just the glider, it was the weight of experience. He was 18, with his whole life ahead of him, but he knew now that he would always be looking up, forever tethered to the wind.